Welcome to Afterwards. Today, Daniel Halper, his new book, Clinton Inc., The Audacious Rebuilding of a Political Machine. Daniel Halper, welcome.
Thank you, Juan.
This is so interesting. We're in the summer of 2014.
Yep.
Hillary Clinton looks like she is the inevitable Democratic nominee. I say inevitable with a bit of a snark because we've been here before. But this time, her numbers, poll numbers, are just daunting. And in this summer, there are a number of books about the Clintons, and especially Hillary Clinton. So your book now comes out, and the angle that you take is fascinating because the suggestion here is that the Clintons are not just a marriage of 38 years, but in fact a political partnership and a business enterprise. I think you say that the Clinton Foundation revenue $214 million last year or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
That's an incredible way of looking at the Clintons, a business, Daniel. So help us to understand, what are the dimensions of Clinton Inc.?
Well, like any business, there are several leaders, and I suggest those leaders are Bill and Hillary Clinton, although there are emerging leaders, which we can get into.
Okay.
And I also suggest that it's not just the primary goal of money like any other corporation, though that is a major goal, but it's also political fortune. That the Clintons here, since leaving the White House in a cloud of scandal and impeachment and in all these unsavory things, have really fought their way back. They have created this organization, which is multi-million-dollar, in a way multinational, and they're now sitting on top of the political and global elite. Whether or not she decides to run, whether or not she ends up running, whether or not she becomes president, that doesn't really matter, because I think the story here is so fascinating anyway. As you suggest, this has never been done before. No other political couple have achieved so much success in so little time and come from really such a nadir to where they are in this pinnacle, as I suggest.
Well, in writing in the forward part, you mentioned that they have an unquenchable thirst for wealth and power. And you say that the subtitle actually is meant to kind of skewer them because you talk about audacious rebuilding. So given that they're coming from a point where they went through the impeachment and the scandal, you don't see this as a good thing. You see this as evidence of people who are shameless in a way.
Well, there is an element of shamelessness, obviously. I think any sort of politician requires a bit of shamelessness in order to just stand up on stage and say, I'm the best politician, there is nobody better than me, entrust your future and your kids' future in me and my ability. So sure, there's a bit of shamelessness, but it's not all bad. It's not all, one of the keys to their success has been this philanthropy, or at least this vision of them doing philanthropy. I think that's been enormously successful, and perhaps in some ways it's helped people, and it's sort of trickled down to help people in need across the world. So there is shamelessness for sure. It's not totally shameless. It's a more complex and I hope more nuanced approach than just a single label to these political couple.
Now, Newt Gingrich suggested that the title shouldn't be Clinton Inc. What did he suggest?
I think he suggested something about them, how their mutual marriage, and it's in the book.
Yeah. Well, what I saw was he said power couple.
Power couple, and then he said
mutual survival.
Survival.
Yeah. And it just strikes me that conservatives at the moment are preoccupied with Hillary Clinton, but the Clintons in general.
Right.
And part of their preoccupation is the idea that the liberal media is insufficiently critical of the Clintons. And part of that is in your book, in that people are reluctant to talk about Clinton Inc.
Right. Well, this is sort of the conundrum. I can't, what they're saying now is obviously for political gain, but as I was reporting the book, I was struck by how many Republicans have only nice things to say about the Clintons, about both Bill and Hillary. And I credit it to this systematic approach to win over their enemies. Bill Clinton obviously is impeached. He's impeached by Republicans, not Democrats. They realize when they leave the White House that their problem is with Republicans, not Democrats. So Bill Clinton calls up all these Republicans. He has these late night phone calls with Newt Gingrich. He has, whenever he sees one United States senator I spoke to, he says, oh, great job on TV last Sunday. Just small compliments, but that are meaningful to these people. And on a very human level, he wins over all his enemies, from James Rogan, the former congressman who helped lead impeachment for the Republicans. He lost re-election largely because of leading impeachment, they exchange letters these days. So I think one issue is that Republicans have really been won over by by Bill and Hillary Clinton. Hillary, meanwhile, is in the Senate during this time after leaving the White House, and Hillary is incredibly nice to people like John McCain and Lindsey Graham, also impeachment leaders, also staunch Republicans. It's softened their image, but it's also softened Hillary's image. And I think that's an important key to this, to understanding how they came back, is the Republican part of this. So when I'm speaking to them, they're only saying nice things, even if we're talking on background, even if I'm not going to credit these people with saying nasty things about the Clintons. They have warm feelings to them. And I think it's really a credit to the human interaction and this understanding of human nature, that humans in a way are complex, but in a way can be won over rather easily. When a powerful man like Bill Clinton gives you a compliment, you look toward him with a little more favorability than you did beforehand. And so 15 years of doing this has paid off. And I'd also argue, as I do in the book, that in 2008, the comeback had been so sufficient with the conservatives and with Republicans that Hillary's problem was never with conservatives and Republicans. Hillary's problem was that she hadn't won over Democrats, that they didn't realize that there was this massive problem with Democrats, that Democrats were disappointed that Bill Clinton as president wasn't the transformational liberal president that they had envisioned, that he couldn't be the Ronald Reagan that they wanted him to be, that instead he serves at a time with relative peace, relative prosperity, some due to his own governing, some due to good fortune. But nonetheless, it's this problem with Democrats that they run into. And I think that's one of the reasons she goes into the State Department. And it's one of the reasons over the last 5 years, they've really been focusing on Democrats and a little less so on Republicans.
You know, I'm interested, just to follow up on your line here. One, I think it's Richard Mellon-Scaife, the publisher of the Pittsburgh paper. When he's sick, Hillary, and remember, he was one of the prime antagonists during the Clinton presidency for the Clintons, with all kinds of conspiracy theories and the like. But when he gets sick, what happens?
Well, Richard Mellon-Scaife, as you suggest, he was the vast right-wing conspiracy. If there was such a thing, it was Richard Mellon-Scaife. He's funding all these sometimes overboard attacks on the Clintons in the 90s. He is a staunch anti-Clinton conservative in the way the Koch brothers are painted now. You know, that's the equivalent. He receives a letter, outreach from Bill Clinton himself when he gets sick, and he gets a letter, hey, Dick, I'm really sad to hear that you're not doing well. I hope you hang in there, buddy. I'm praying for you. You know, sincerely, Bill. And I think that's a remarkable tale also.
That illustrates your point, I think. And also in the book, you talk about how Bill Clinton reaches out in 2008 to John McCain as McCain is running against the Democrat Barack Obama.
Right. So this is in the general election. Hillary has already lost, and Barack Obama is in the heat of the campaign against John McCain. On the sly, you know, this is September of October 2008. It's a heated campaign. McCain's going to, you know, there's the financial crisis and everything like that. On the sly, McCain's receiving phone calls from none other than Bill Clinton, and they are talking about the state of the race. They are talking about what American voters want to hear at a time like this. They are talking about, you know, all sorts of things regarding the campaign. And I asked Senator McCain, because I interviewed him in his office, and I asked him, I said, it sounds a lot like he was giving you advice, right? I mean, and he said, well, advice may be a little too far, but nonetheless, it's clear when he describes it that it sounds exactly like advice. It sounds like he is essentially a campaign consultant. And that's, I think, shows how the Clintons, no matter what happens, they always are looking out for themselves. No matter what their fortune is, no matter what's going on, the Clintons want to secure their place in history. They want to secure their place for the next election, whenever that might be.
Now, you know, what's interesting here is, here in this book, you actually say that contrary to public perception, Bill Clinton is the cold, calculating one. Hillary Clinton you describe as a warm, personable, charming figure.
Right. Well, this kind of surprised me because, you know, I grew up reading about the Clintons or listening to them on NPR or whatever, and I didn't really get to know them until reporting out this book, and I was shocked that the people who knew them best suggested that their general perception of them was wrong and that it was the opposite of